What did what was that? That's me. Okay. So click here. Okay. Okay. There's the hours in there. But I don't see where. Okay. Oh, attendees. Oh, the owl. I don't see it. Go ahead, click on it again. Can you hear
Okay.
anything?
I can see the owl, you know.
I think you need to do the owl for microphone. Okay, we ready? I'm gonna set the microphone for the owl. Yes.
I can probably.
Veronica, Shanae is being asked to be made a panelist.
Thank you, Dr. Hirsch.
You're welcome.
Can you hear now?
Can you hear us? Okay, I see them.
Perfect.
Okay, Jay, could you speak for me?
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much. Jay, you're gonna be representing the OCCA, right?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, everybody, we're having some difficulties. We'll get started in a couple minutes. Sorry about that. Okay, is everybody ready? We good?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the budget subcommittee. I'm the chair of the committee. I'm the clerk of the board, trustee Gonzalez Toy. With me, I have the co-chair of the committee and president of the board, trustee Smith Foltz. And We also, for this committee, we have advisory members. And we're gonna take roll call, everybody in a second, representing labor. But if you are watching, you are in the right place if you're here for budget. So we'll ask, it's gonna be you or Dr. Hurst, that does roll call.
It's Dr. Hurst, would you like to do roll call?
Yep, I can definitely do the roll call. President Smith Folds,
Good evening, everyone present.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Present,
from UTR, John Zabala. Doesn't look like he's here. Shanae Vaughn, Teamsters.
Present.
Kim Chamberlain from SSA.
Present.
Kristen Persley from ASTU is not here, and Jay Irvin representing WCCAA.
Good evening, everybody present.
So it looks like we have 2 members absent, sir.
thank you, Dr. Hurst. In the room, we also have a few other folks. We have, the, Chief Academic Officer / Associate Superintendent of Ed Services, and many other titles, Sonia Neely Johnson. We also have interim, Chief Business Officer, Kim Moses, soon to be doctor, cross fingers. And then we also have, Veronica, I don't want to get your title incorrect. It's,
Senior Admin Assistant. for business services.
thank you so much, Veronica. There you go. Thank you so much. Okay. Wonderful. So to get started today, we're gonna start with public comment. Do we, if you have public comment, please raise your hand. The public will get 2 minutes. We're also gonna have opportunities for public comment, after presentations for the discussion and action items. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Okay, so let's move right along in today's agenda. And we should have added approval of the agenda, so I apologize for that. But we'll start with the purpose and outcomes of the committee. Our purpose is not just to restart this committee, to be able to review our budget, be able to ask questions and be transparent with our numbers. But this year specifically, we're gonna continue to look at contracts and services that the district pays for because of our budgetary issues. So that's really our overall purpose. Ms. Moses, anything you'd like to add? And then
No, not until we get to the agenda items.
okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
President Nicole, anything like that?
Just thank you everyone for being here. Thank you Clerk Gonzalez Hoy for being the lead in this subcommittee. I know that because of you, we saved so much money last time because of your collaborative way of thinking and bringing together everyone. Thank you to CBO Moses for taking time out again to help us comb through the budget. We really appreciate it. Because of both of your level of transparency, I know that we will continue to have a greater understanding of where we are and where we need to be and how do we get on a better financial footing. I am complete.
Thank you. And then the reason why we have some advisory folks in the committee is because in the fall, we invited labor to be part of the process to looking at contracts and services. And we want to continue with that practice where they are part of the conversation because it is a Brown Act committee. The advisory members are not going to be voting or anything like that, but we will take their advice and thoughts in consideration as President Nichols and I make decisions that then will go to the full board for consideration. And we want to make it clear that labor is incredibly important to us because they represent all of our employees in the district. So it was important for us to have their advice as we make choices with our budgetary priorities. Any questions before we move on from our outcomes and purpose from the advisory groups? Okay, wonderful. Then let's move forward. Our first actual agenda item is the review of our second interim report. So I'll pass it on to Ms. Moses.
Good evening. Thank you for passing it over and just checking a document very quickly. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I thought we'd take the opportunity to do a deeper dive into our second interim report that was shared at the last board meeting. We did a general review of what's in the second interim, but I thought it would be useful to, together as a group, go through some of the detailed items that were presented in the second interim report. I'll be sharing with you shortly a presentation that is just an extension of what we shared last time. And I wanted to ensure, before I share it with you, I'm just checking those numbers. To ensure that what we're sharing is indeed the most accurate information. So I apologize for the delay. Let me get that on the board for you and we'll get started.
Ms. Moose, would you also be able to share your screen? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank
I
you.
am just making an adjustment here. I was combining worksheets and want to ensure that the worksheets that I share are indeed the most up to date. So again, thank you for your patience. And here we go. I will be sharing my worksheet, my screen, and then I'll also share a copy of the presentation as well. Apologize for the delay. All right, so good evening, everyone. We're just going to take a few slides to dig a little deeper into what we have discovered from our budget review at second interim. We do have Jeff Carter as well on the call, and I'm going to ask Veronica if you could promote him to panelist just in case questions come up. And I'll leave it up to the trustees whether we take questions within the slides or at the end of the presentation.
Why don't we do it at the end?
Okay,
I think that makes
wonderful. All right, so just to recap what was shared at the board meeting on March 20th, there were some changes during the second interim preparation. We found that the fund balance experienced a decrease, but that we had an increase in interest income, which was a pleasant surprise. We also discovered that our budgeted expenditures came in at second interim a little more elevated than expected, so we had an increase in those expenditures. We also announced that the Legislative Analyst's Office has announced the expected decrease in COLA to a 0.76 COLA for the 24-25 school year. So this is unfortunately resulting in a decrease in funding for our district and all districts across the state. I wanted to do a quick recap of enrollment. I think that we have discussed the importance of enrollment and ADA in our financial picture, that the way in which our schools are indeed funded is through the number of students that we enroll, but more specifically through the number of students who attend on average each day. This is the slide that was shared during second interim that shows that during this current school year, our enrollment is coming in at an estimated 25,577 students. And at the same time, we have an estimated ADA of 88.24%. It's the expected average across the year at this point. What that means is that approximately 11.75% of our students, we do not collect revenue for because of the daily attendance being significantly low, or it's an impact to our budget because it's lower than expected, I should say. So we also reviewed the changes to the revenue. This is also a slide from last week showing that there was a slight decrease in the ADA collected, and also that we did experience a 0.49% increase in our unduplicated count. So we were pleased about that. What this amounted to is a drop in our base of $1 million roughly. However, because of the increase in the unduplicated percentage, we did see an increase in expected supplemental concentration money of $894,672. So the net change of that is a decrease of $190,454. And we think that is an indication of us paying attention to our numbers and using what we know about our budget. We're pretty well close to what we expected to take in at first interim. If we look at the total LCFF revenue at this current measurement point, second interim, we're expected to have $342,767,000 in revenue from LCFF for this current year. We also talked about the changes to the second interim and the revisions to the multi-year projections and the things that impact that. The assumptions that are impacting these changes is an additional decline in our average daily attendance. However, we are accounting for that slight increase in our unduplicated pupil percentage for our LCAP funding. There was an increase in interest income, so we're delighted and we expect to have additional increases as well. We already talked about the decrease in COLA from 3.94 expected to a 0.76 actual. And the estimated funded COLA for the following year, 25-26, also experienced a decrease from 3.29 to 2.73. These are significant because we count on these to support our step and column increases and other increases to our budget. So when the COLA comes in at an underfunded rate, it does unfortunately dig deeper into our budget shortfalls. We are expected to make an increased contribution from Fund 17 in years 2 and 3 because of these changes that are resulting in less than expected revenue. So I just wanted to share from our original adopted budget and our first interim expectations. These are the assumptions that we use to plan for our budget multi-year projections. And if you look at the top figure are the assumptions that were used in June of 2023 when the original budget was adopted. What we expected to have for our budget is for the 24-25 school year, a 3.94% COLA. We also expected to have a 3.29% COLA for 25-26. So when the multi-year budget was built in June, we assumed that we would have these increases and we built them into the budget. However, in January 2024, it was solidified that there would indeed be decreases. So that bottom table shows the decreases, that instead of 3.94, indeed, we are now planning for significantly less, 0.76 COLA. And for the following year, 25-26, we are also planning for a decrease in COLA to 2.73%. I wanted to lift this up as significant because what this means is we now have to go back and reconfigure all of our numbers because we built our previous budgets expecting more revenue than we'll have because of the decrease in this COLA. What I wanted to show here is the changes since our adopted budget and second interim and our projections for the out years. Prior to starting, I was double checking we're good. Double checking my spreadsheet because the titles seem to have gotten switched around, but we are good. So what you'll see here, this is just our revenue calculations. And the first column there lists what was adopted in June of 2023 as our multi-year budget. So that was what we were projected to have when we brought this budget forward for board approval in June of 2023. The column next to that demonstrates the change that now reflects on the following column, 23-24. This is the second interim update. And then we've also listed the projections for the out years and their change numbers as well. So I just wanted to share, when we look at what was adopted and we consider the reductions that we have made and the reductions in income that we expected to receive, what we have is a change of negative 1.5 million in our LCFF revenue for this current year. And we're expecting, unfortunately, that number looks interesting, a negative 13 million in the following year's revenue based upon declining enrollment. Was Jeff promoted?
Yes.
Okay. Jeff, I'm going to ask you to unmute and make any additions to that that you would like. Are we good there?
Yeah, it's just, that negative 13 million is including, ADA reduction, enrollment reduction, and the COLA reduction.
Thank you, Jeff. I wanted to explain why that amount was so large. Okay, but however, we do see on the item numbers 3 and 4, other state revenues and other local revenues, where we have had an increase in the state revenues, and that is the result of interest, and local revenues also a result of interest. Jeff, anything to add there?
Nope.
Okay, wonderful. So we've tried to make the adjustments based upon the assumptions. I believe that the reduction in the local revenues for the following year may have to do with the fact that our balance is decreased, so we expect less interest. Is that correct?
Yes, and potentially, depending on the local revenue, we can't count on it until we get a GAN or a letter of intent.
Great. So grants are also configured in there. So I just wanted you to be able to see these numbers rolled out a little bit more specifically and how our budget is being built with the current information and data that we have available in this moment. And at the bottom of this slide, I just reviewing what I went over previously, that the original budget planned for a higher COLA, and then we had to decrease that for the next year for 24-25, and then decrease it further once the actual COLA was announced. So these impacts make a great deal of difference in our budget, and that's why you see that large decrease in red from 23-24 to 24-25. The next slide, I want to show the same thing, but this time for expenses. This shows the expenses broken out by categories. We didn't share this level of detail last week, so I wanted to share it with you here tonight. Just to show where we're seeing significant increases in our budget, some expected and some not expected in the manner in which they show up. I'll give you an example. For the first line item, certificated salaries, this includes all payments to certificated employees, not just permanent salaries. So this includes substitutes, it includes stipends, it includes everything. So at budget adoption, we expected to spend 115.3 million on salaries combined for certificated. What we found is that number is actually coming in higher than we had anticipated based upon the number of positions we have built into the budget and the amount of monies that have been spent out covering vacancies and stipends and other expenses that show up in the certificated salaries line item. However, if you look at the next two out years, we expect that the change is going to be 1.7 and 1.5 million respectively. And that, I believe, is accounting just for step and column. And step and column is about 1.1% of the budget. And I just want to point out that because we have a 0.76 COLA, we aren't increasing our budget enough to even cover step and column. And so in that sense, the state calls this a negative COLA because the COLA is not large enough to cover our increase in expenses. And that's, so you may hear the term negative COLA, even though we're getting something, it's not enough to cover the increase that we expect to have. So then we'll look at the next line for classified employees, and that hasn't gone up as much as we've seen in the certificated, but we have also seen an increase in the base to the classified salaries as well. When you look at employee benefits, we've broken that up into two columns. One for just benefits, and which are the counts, STRS and PERS and other costs, and health and welfare costs. So while we're seeing a decrease in health and welfare, primarily because we have so many positions that aren't being filled, and so we're not paying out as much in health and welfare, we are experiencing an increase in benefits overall. So that those two line items are pretty well balancing out, even though we are making adjustments in the budget to remove benefits from positions that have not been filled. Jeff, do you want to add anything about health and welfare or salaries?
Nothing to add that you didn't already mention, just that, yes, vacancy money is being moved out of benefits to cover substitutes, contractors, time cards, overtime, things like that.
Okay, thank you. And you'll see in the out years, the expected change in the across our years is not as large as what our actual reality is this year. So, and then we'll go down to our services and other operating expenses. We are seeing a large change there from an expectation of 36.2 million at budget adoption to now 46.5 million, an increase of about 10 million. A majority of this is reflected in the contracts that we're needing to cover positions and operating expenses that we didn't expect to come in as expensive as they are. However, we are expecting a decrease next year in this amount, although be it slight. Anything to add on contracts and other services, Jeff?
Some of this money came in after adopted budget, so ELOP or Prop 28. There's a couple other big ones that were not in the adopted budget that we ended up receiving either prior to first interim or prior to second interim that adjusted some of these contracts. Community schools grant is another big one.
Okay. I believe here we're only looking at unrestricted, Jeff.
Oh, yep, sorry, yep.
Okay, so that becomes an issue when we look at our combined budget, but not so much in this one. And then if you look the rest of it, there aren't very many changes. Jeff, could you speak to why the direct and indirect costs are coming up negative? I'm not sure I can explain that as clear as you.
Indirect costs come up as negative because they're technically revenue for us. We're taking them from the grants that we get and charging them as revenue towards operating expenses for business services or HR, utilities, keeping the lights on, things like that.
Okay, so it's just because it's a changing of a fund that it shows negative?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so these are, oh, sorry, didn't mean to go there. So I just wanted you to see these expenses and the changes across the interim and the multi-year projections. So that if we look at the total expenditures this current year, we adopted a budget where we expected to expend 271.1 million. What we found at second interim is we're more in line to spend the amount of 278.4 million. But we do see that in the out years of 24, 25 and 25, 26, we are estimating that we will not have expenses that large in the out years, primarily due to the reductions that we're making that you'll see built into this page as well, the 17 million net change that we'll experience due to our 19 million in cuts this year. And then also an expected 7 million of reductions for the 25-26 school year.
And then if I could just clarify one more thing.
Mhm.
For the unrestricted amount, the 10 million increase for number 5, that's the first student transportation contract and LCAP aligning budgets from carryover to being budgeted after adopted budget.
I'm sorry, could he explain that again?
Yeah.
Jeff, yeah, could you go into detail about those two contracts in specific? I think if you name them as contracts, it might be better.
Yeah, for the 5,000s lines, that $10 million increase is majority made up by the increase to our first student transportation contract increase. They increased their cost to us per student, and we had to adjust the contract for them before first interim, but after adopted budget. And then the LCAP plan alignment was carryover money from LCAP that got budgeted after adopted budget once we realized or had a more direct number of what our carryover would be.
I know I said questions at the end, but
That's
just
okay.
for this piece specifically. Was the increase 10 million though, or like, I thought the increase was only a couple million. No, am I wrong?
First student was 9-ish million.
That we saw an increase in 1 year?
30%.
Oh.
7 and 9?
Yeah, I thought it was already 7. So then it went up to 10?
So I know that the percentage of increase to the contract, I wish Mary were here too. The percentage increase to what the contractor or the vendor is now charging us, we got a 30% bump. And they also increased their rate they increased their services 30% to match the bump.
Got it, but we weren't paying 30 and they increased it by 10, right? So my question is, why are we seeing the 10 increased after adopted budget? Like, to me, it sounds like it wasn't taken into consideration prior to adopted budget as part of the unrestricted budget. Does that make sense? Like,
It
or am I
absolutely
understand-
does.
Okay,
No,
thank
I
you.
think it does. Jeff, does this have to do with the timing of when we sign the contract, the new contract with First Student?
Correct. First students, that didn't come in until a little bit before first interim. So the adjustment is because adopted budget happening in June, we didn't have the new contract yet.
They also went through a bid. I was transitioning out of that position, so it was a bid process because they had to bid against 3 other vendors.
Yeah.
And the 10 million isn't all from first student. I would just, a majority of it is the first student contract, but there are other additions that also increased, such as LCAP budget alignment to different departments and making some adjustments to LCAP.
Got it. So included in that 10 million is the 30% increase to transportation, which is about 3 million. And then there's an additional 7 million of increases to other things in that number.
Yes, but I think it's more than 3 million for first student.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe the first student contract, I'll have Veronica to look it up, because the increase was significant.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they increase, okay, so if I can just make sure I'm getting it right. First student, the company we use for our special education students, if they have an IEP that says they have transportation,
Mm-hmm.
that company increased how much they're gonna charge us to do that service.
Mm-hmm.
And they increased it by 30%?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's where this number gets bigger at, because of the 30% increase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then is there another increase with transportation in general or just first student?
For the purposes of this line item,
Just first student.
it's the only transportation we're talking about is first student.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and we knew the increase was coming and it was built into the budget, but we were waiting on vendors and we didn't yet have a contract. So when they built the budget in June, they did not increase it
This is last.
last June.
So when the previous CBO built the budget last June,
Mhm,
they knew an increase was coming. They didn't know how much of an increase was coming,
mhm.
so they undershot it.
Mhm,
And then what we have to do is correct that.
mhm.
And that's where you have this kind of bigger number, because you had to supplement their undershot. They said 5, it's actually 30, something like that, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
in the case of expenditures, that's almost always the case.
Okay.
When you see an increase in expenditures, it means that when the team estimated in June what they thought we would spend, they underestimated us. Yep.
Because they don't have an accurate number yet, because a contract hasn't come in, or they just don't know yet, so that's why you say budgets are an estimate,
Yes,
and as close to what you can get as possible. Okay.
yes. Anything else to add, Jeff?
No, that's it.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the question. All right. Okay, so just to wrap up, and this is the wrap of the second interim review. I've also asked Veronica to make a PDF of the presentation and put it in the chat for the panelists so that you can access it as well. Maybe Kim should join the Zoom as a panelist so she could get it as well. Yeah, but we had to make a determination of whether we would meet our obligation across the 3 years. And what we found is that in this current year, we are meeting our 3% reserves, and we expect to have some fund balance at the end of this year. Next year, we expect to meet our 3% reserve, but we have to take the actions of our fiscal solvency plan and also contribute $15.7 million of a contribution from Fund 17. And then in the following year, we will meet our 3% reserve if we continue with that fiscal reduction plan and have a $20.3 million contribution from Fund 17. What this results in is, because our ability to meet that 3% reserve is contingent upon so many different factors, reductions and contributions, we certified as a qualified budget, because if any of those things goes awry, then we may not be able to meet that 3% reserve. So this is a certification of qualified because of our need to reduce. And that is the end of the presentation for second interim. I'll stop here and turn it back over to Clerk Gonzalez Hoy for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moses. Okay, was Shanae promoted? Sorry, if you wouldn't mind promoting Shanae.
Oh, she must have left and come back in. Got it. And Denise Steen is here. Would we like to?
So who's the representative for the CIA? Jay, is it you or is it Denise? So I want to make sure that we're equitable. It's only supposed to be one per union.
Yeah, so go ahead and promote Denise. I was just here until she was able to join, so.
Oh, bummer. Okay, I don't want to kick you out, but you're welcome to just turn off your camera and we'll pretend that you're not there. If you would like to stay.
Okay, and Denise
It's
had
okay.
sent an email saying she would be late.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
But thank you, thank you. Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Well,
Shanae, can you hear us?
I can. Everything's good now. Thank you.
Great. And Denise, can you hear us?
I'm here.
Hi, welcome. Okay, everybody, so now, we're gonna, go to questions. Who would like to start that has a question? We'll start with, Kim Chamberlain, and then everyone else, if you could just raise your Zoom hand. If you're on Zoom, I think that'll just be very helpful for me. So we'll start with you, Kim, go ahead.
So, knowing that we have increases, past practice is one thing, but going forward, knowing that we have a chance at increases, are we budgeting with an increase rather than a status quo with the financial aim of this district at this point? Such as the fact that the busing, I mean, sorry, but I wasn't listening to those budget meetings last year, and I was paying attention to presentations and knew that there were going to be increases, yet the person in charge of the budget last year did not increase it in an appropriate financial, I mean, if you know that winter's coming on, increase your PG&E budget by $100 at least to make sure that you can meet that bill for the winter time. We knew that they were going to increase, they told us they were going to be doing increases for busing. We know that, we're decreasing our financial costs for the COLA and are we going to account for that? I mean, it seems like we're doing a round robin with not paying attention to the fact that everything is increasing and we didn't do that. And I think that's one reason we're in this financial hole this year. And I've got one other thing to say.
Mhm.
I'm not surprised on the ADA. I've said it for 5 years. And the
Well,
previous.
let's do
CBO
questions first. Sorry, I should have clarified. Let's do questions and then we'll do like a round of comments, just so that everybody can get it.
Well, I wanna ask, are we looking at the decreases in ADA for other districts? And what, since you're going to the state, and I know you and Dr. Hurst have gone up and listened to the state. What are they saying? What are they going to help us with? What are they doing because that's how we are financially getting our monies at this point. And it's not increasing. I mean, we're not gonna get back to 95%. Sorry. That's just not going to happen with the opportunities families have with charters and private schools and online learning. Families learn that they can travel. So what is the state gonna do for us?
You could be a board member. You turn that comment
I
really
might,
well.
yeah. No. I will have one of your seats. No, that is my goal. Don't worry.
Okay, so let me address the first part of your question about making sure that the budget is adjusted accurately, right? So one of the things that must happen across the year is that we must make the adjustments that match our spending. So even though the budget that was adopted in June did not cover all of these expenses, we by law have to go back and put them in, and that's why you see them here. I can tell you that when you look at the multi-year projections, our projections are in line with what we expect the increases to be.
From this point forward?
From this point forward. So if you look,
Thank you.
yeah, our second interim, and you'll see slight changes, increases across the expenditures for the out years. Because we do know that they are gonna increase, and we can estimate right now about what that increase would be. And that's what we're trying to do to the best of our ability. We do not intend to bring a budget forth to the board that doesn't reflect an accurate picture of what we need to spend and what we already know. I can also say that unfortunately, we've had a lot of one-time monies that served as safety nets for some of these expenses. And I don't wanna make it seem like the previous team wasn't thoughtful. I think that the previous team knew that we need those one-time monies to cover real expenses in real time. And those one-time monies as restricted funds could not be placed in an unrestricted budget. Does that make sense? However, with this new fiscal team, we do not intend to continue that practice. And then your second question about state help, I can't gauge any of that. I don't know if Dr. Hurst wants to speak to it, but this, I mean, if you're following the news, you know, the state is in fiscal trouble too.
Yeah.
And so I don't anticipate them being able to create a circumstance where they're doing more for us right now, because they're also trying to address their budget deficit. But they do seem to be protecting education funding at current levels, which we're hopeful. Disappointing about the COLA, but the Prop 98 promise is in line with what they have been consistently offering. So our hope is that there isn't a decrease in that. But I don't think we can count on extra until the state addresses their fiscal issues as well.
I would just say that I agree with you, CBO Moses. There's no indication that there's anything extra coming right now from the state.
Kim, did you have any other, I thought you, no,
This time, thank
okay,
you.
thank you. Anyone else from, our groups have any questions? Denise, Shanae, any questions?
No,
Okay. President Nicole, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions. I have a comment, but no question.
Okay, let me ask my
I do-
question. and start
I do
comments.
have a question.
Oh,
I
sure.
mean, sorry. Let me
Go
raise
ahead.
my hand. So in looking at that, and sorry I missed the first part, but in looking at that last slide, talking about a $15 million deficit and then a $20 million, like continuing on. What's the goal for this next year in terms of cuts? And are there some suggestions on ways to do that? Are we starting from scratch?
Let me just make sure that I understand the question. Is it this slide that you're referring to where we talked about the need to contribute?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go back to this other slide for our revenues. Is that our revenues? No, let me go back to expenditures. We've already identified reductions for next year, and those are built in. That's the 19 million that we've cut, but it's a net of 17 million after the step-in column from the reductions. We're also expecting to cut 7 million in the 25-26 school year. Those are really deep cuts that we're committed to making, and what we'd like to do, because in addition to these cuts, we do still need contributions in order to get through, in order to be able to meet our 3% reserve requirement and pay our contributions to other programs. So I think what I can say and what I think we as a district are committed to is operating leaner and continuing to search for ways we can save and retain some of that, some of our Fund 17. We're nearly depleting it at this rate. And we know, if you know the history of our district, that it really benefits us to have a balance available in Fund 17. But until we understand better the complete picture of what we're faced with next year, I'm not comfortable naming strategies to a plan, because I think it's something we have to discuss and create together, because it is going to take all of us in order to realize not only the fiscal solvency cuts, but also operating leaner.
So I guess my next question or my comment is there a strategy moving forward to increase enrollment and decrease absenteeism, which I believe is a leader in this deficit? Because I think that's where we need to really start targeting, like, advertisements, pitching our special education. Like, there's got to be some things rather than cuts to build our reputation and our capacity for educating our students.
I agree with you, Denise, and I think I'll probably reiterate the same statement that I said before, is that, and I'll pass it over to the trustees, that's something we have to work on together. I put on the slide for enrollment trends because this isn't just a WCC USD problem, as you know, we've mentioned many times, it's a problem across the state. And it's also an indication of what's happening with parents having choice between public and charter and virtual and in person. And that, you know, as a district, I know we're committed to strategies, but we have to decide those together. And I see Dr. Hurst has a hand up. Go ahead, Dr. Hurst.
Thank you so much, CBO Moses. I just wanted to just respond to Ms. Steen's question about strategy and absenteeism and attendance. We have been involved in these conversations with LaShante Smith, but just like CBO Moses said, it's really all of our responsibility and we have to all take a part in it. But I will share that I'm not sure if you are aware of the System Change Collaborative. That's where me and John Joya and the mayors and LaShante and Martine are all involved in that. One of the big conversation pieces has been around chronic absenteeism and really getting our students back into school. And we have been working on strategies in that collaborative. And we are almost to the point where we can present some of those strategies. And I do know that LaShante has been planning to present some of those strategies to the board and to the public. And we're looking forward to that special board meeting being, I think, on April the 17th. So yes, we are planning strategies. And I do agree that that has to be a focus.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Smith Folds had a question. Go ahead.
CBO Moses, would you mind going back to the slide that you showed just a minute ago when Principal Steen had a question? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding.
This one about
No,
the,
ma'am, the one, right? Yes, ma'am. Yep.
this one?
Okay, so. Wait, maybe that's not it. Okay, so this right here is what we did this year, the 19, almost 20 million, right? This is what we did this year that's gonna be in place next year.
Yes.
Next year, when we're in 24-25 school year,
Mhm.
we're gonna have to try to find minimum $7 million worth of cuts that will then happen on the 25-26 school year.
Mhm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was the question I had. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then I don't want confusion over the 19 million and the 17 million. It has to do with the way the fiscal solvency plan was built by the previous team.
Okay,
They built in 19 million and then added step and column, which as a net, when you balance those two out with the way the budget is written, it's a net of 17. So just want to explain
the
that.
17 in the 25-26 year? Or the
24, 25,
the
yeah.
24-25 year?
That's
that
the
you
work we've
then
already
see
done.
again in the 25-26.
Yeah, we gotta keep it out. All this stuff that we cut, we gotta keep the cut out.
That's what that means. Okay,
That's
so
what
we
that means.
can't put anything
can't
back
put it back.
in.
Yeah.
That's why the 17 is here in 24-25,
Mhm.
and you'll see it again in 25-26, and maybe in whatever it is, because
Yes.
that you can't put back in, because we don't have money coming in
Right,
to cover what we already took out.
right. So, and that's just a reminder
Okay.
that the things we already cut, they can't come back.
Can't come back.
And we
Okay.
need to cut 7 more on top of that.
Okay,
And we're building our fiscal solvency plan so that it's gonna be a true 7 that we need to identify minimally.
minimum,
Yes.
okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complete.
Thank you. Ms. Mills, could you go to slide 7? Actually, it was the one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, I did have a question about the 1.5 million net change.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that to me again for the 24-25? Why that's an added 1.5 million or a negative?
So you're talking about the LCFF sources line,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so when the budget was adopted, they assumed that we have revenue totaling 344.3 million. That was based on their assumption of number of students enrolled
Oh, okay.
and amount of ADA that we would be able to collect. Also, the unduplicated count percentages play a role as well. So, I don't have the first interim slide up, but I'm gonna go back to this one. Do you see here where we're showing a decrease of 190 because of this decline? Well, during first interim, we showed a decrease of, had to be the difference,
Got
if
it.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
And it's really the difference, and so it's the adjustments that have needed to be made because of what was estimated to come in. The estimations were not spot on.
got it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and my last question, I guess, would be if you go back to slide 8, the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So when will we start conversations about the 7 million?
So that is agenda item number 3, I think.
Look at us.
I have a document that I'm going to share with you, and I hope to engage us in a discussion
Okay.
so that you could have input on not only the timeline, but also the process. So we have that later in our agenda.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so is there anyone who would like to make a comment before we move to the next item?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, President.
I want to thank you for the presentation and taking time to walk us through it, because that helps. Just having the correct language behind the numbers that I see helps me be able to not only absorb it in my head, but be able to communicate it out to people. So I think that that's amazing. I would like to see, on top of all of your free funds, I would like to see this brought to the community. Like this is doing it now. We have a budget committee, but when we did I would love to see you teach us budget. Like just teach the community budget and teach, because I've found so much value in you teaching it here, that I would love to see Budget University or whatever it was called, done at some point. And I know you have so much on your plate, but when there is a lull, to have that taught to us, because I just think it makes school budget is so complicated. But the more that we inform our community, the more they can understand why decisions have to be made, what they look like, that the budget is our value, but inside value, you still have to make hard choices. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to that. I would like to attend that university again, because the more I hear about budget, the better I become understanding it.
Okay,
I'm
Yeah.
complete.
thank you. We had put budget dates on the calendar for the ambassadors program, and unfortunately, they had to get pushed back. But I think that we should discuss.
I love summer school, Karen. Whenever you want, like, it's summer school, we do it in the summer, so whatever, it's up to you.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
complete.
Thank you. I did have one quick comment. I mean, I think that in part, we know why this problem exists, and in some of it because of the state funding. But last night I was watching the board meeting in Palo Alto. It's one of the districts I worked in my day job. And the superintendent was sharing an update on the budget, and he shared that they are funded because they're basically a district, based on their property taxes. They are funded at $31,000 per student. And then last week I was watching a board meeting for Woodside School District, and their one school district has close to $15 million, one school. And I think that, like, my hope, and here I'm just preaching to you all, my hope is that one of these days, like, we're able to, I know LCFF and LCAP was supposed to be a way to combat that, but it's still not doing what it's supposed to, right? I mean, the reality is that we're still really far away from Palo Alto, right? For example, right? They have 16 schools, but they have close to almost the same amount of money that we do. How is that fair? Right? And I think that the state has to look at that, right? Like, they have to ultimately decide, like, should, like, property taxes somewhere else be supporting, you know, the education of areas that really can't support themselves, like us, right? Like, I think something has to happen, and I think that the inequities are so real and so sad. Because even with the support of LCFF, we're still not even close. What are we funded up per student? 10,000?
About 11,000.
11,000. Oh my goodness, look at $20,000 difference between us and a school, and, you know, a school district 2 hours away from us. Anyways, I just want to put it out there because I know there's going to be community leaders and members who are going to watch it later, and I want them to also understand that we are just not funded equally in the state of California, as most people tend to believe because of LCFF. So I just want to put it in perspective. So thank you so much. We can move forward to the next item, which is the discussion timeline for the development for the 25-26 fiscal solvency plan.
Yeah, and I can share this in the chat as well. Okay, can you share, sorry, Veronica, I forgot you were here. Can you share the fiscal solvency plan for them to view as we clear it out? Okay, thank you. Our second line item is talking about that 7 million in reductions that we'll need to make, and ensuring that we have a plan in place so that this committee can be actively involved and give great feedback from the community and from the members of this committee. So this document is just a planning document, and it is, I created it just for today. The task at hand is to create a timeline to collaborate and provide recommendations to the business services team for the upcoming fiscal reduction plan for the 25-26 school year. And I framed it that way because the reductions have to first go to the team, who then have to create the plan, and then the plan goes before the board, right? So that is just the skeletal plan. And then there'll be the work that we did last year where we're looking at specific reductions. So we first have to decide on overall reductions and then come together and decide on specific reductions after the budget is passed. So two things I think we need to focus on. One is to discuss the process for analyzing the multi-year projected spending for our district. And then the second is to identify initial recommendations for the reduction target of 7 million. For the 25-26 school year. So I've written down some ideas, and these are just my initial ideas as discussion starters. I don't know how far we get. What I'd like to do is share this and then pass it to you, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, and you can guide the discussion, and I can take the notes, and we can maybe leave with some idea of how to move forward. So in my mind, thinking about what needs to be done and how we can do it together, the first thing I thought is we probably just need one really narrow focus for each month so that our plan comes together across time. So I thought first we could review central non-salary expenditures in April, and then move into May and have a cost analysis of specialized programs and contracts, and then analyze staffing levels and district needs. This is in line with what we did in the fall to prepare for the cuts that that the school board has approved for the upcoming year. Because after May, the business services team needs to identify in some manner, whether we say we're gonna target, 5 million in non-salary cuts and 2 million in position reductions. But we have to kind of figure out what that cut's gonna be. The last go round, business services just decided, right? This time, I think we can be more thoughtful because we have time. But in June, we need to have an estimate of where the cuts are gonna come from in terms of the categories, 1s, 2s, and 3s, or 4s and 5s. I then thought that we could pick the work back up in August, because that's when we'll need to then actually identify the line items for reduction, the way in which we did this year. And I thought we could do that by researching and sharing recommendations to reduce these contracts that are so expensive in August. And then moving into a discussion of district priorities aligned with the strategic plan and site SPSA. So really aligning and prioritizing for what we fund. I thought then it might be good to move in October to create a draft reduction list, the way in which we did this year. And then in November, hoping to have a finalized reduction list that we can then take to the board for consideration. So again, this is just my my thinking and a place to have us to start the discussion. So I'll take notes and I'll pass it over to Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moses. Thank you for putting your thoughts behind all this. Why don't we start with maybe initial questions anyone might have on, I know we're all looking at it for the first time, so but any initial questions, and then we'll do recommendations after. So we'll start with President Swinfels. Go ahead.
What do our county friends say? Do they say 7 million is what you're shooting for? Or, cause they like to change, like, 7 million, 8 million, 9 million, 1,000, back to $1 billion. So are they saying 7 billion is what we're targeting, or no?
So this 7 million number actually comes from the fiscal solvency plan that we're working right now.
Okay.
So when the multi-year projection was put together and approved in June,
Okay.
it included 19 million for year 2 and 7 million for year 3.
So they're good.
So that's where that number comes from,
Okay.
what was previously approved and what they were also in agreement.
Okay, perfect. That was my only question, because I hate to find 7 and then it's like, oh, 50. Okay, so I'm just waiting.
So, I mean, obviously the reality is that the deficit is bigger, but they want us they want us to target 7. That's what they have said. They're not gonna change their directive, that they have told us to target 7.
Well, they didn't, I think I need to clarify.
Okay.
Because that number was based upon our previous multi-year projection. However, in all of, we have monthly check-ins and they haven't indicated that they want us to do anything more. But to your point, I think during the next check-in, I should ask that question and say, look at our multi-year projection and ensure that we're still at the $7 million cut.
Get it in writing and blood.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because I think that was, I mean, we're not accountants, but that was part of our problem last time, right? The target kept changing, kept stressing all of us out.
Okay.
I think Kim has a question. Kim, go ahead.
So what could change in May? Because usually isn't that when the governor's budget comes out in May?
Mhm.
And like we just said, things change.
Mhm.
It's budget is a revolving target at this point in time.
Yeah.
Having a meeting in May, do we wanna try to have that towards the end or when August, have that as a focus of the changes that are coming in because of the governor's budget that's gonna come up?
Mhm.
And I know they waited, I think it was last year, possibly that they waited till the very last second they possibly could, like
Mhm.
the witching hour to give it to us.
Yes, and I think Jeff is still a panelist, but I'll start and see if Jeff has anything to add. So we're moving forward right now with creating a budget based upon what we know in this moment. We do know that the budget, the governors may revise, could change our plan. However, we haven't received any indication that that is happening. So we're hopeful, right? But we do have, we had a discussion today about ensuring that we have at least a week between the budget revise and the board meeting or our need to post the budget for review in case we have any surprises and we need to make adjustments. Jeff, anything to add?
The other things that could potentially change are the COLA or any trailer language bills or Prop 98 official final funding.
Okay. Yeah, so those are the things that are up for legislative input, I'll say. And so, yeah, fingers crossed.
I mean, it's, you know, putting it out there that is something we know that has made challenges for all of us previously.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Initial questions? Okay, so let's move forward to, oh, Denise, go ahead.
I'm looking at, the August. Does that seem a little late in sort of researching how we can eliminate some of the, contracted paraprofessionals and replace them with, actual hired employees? I think that's a cost saving, but August is too late. We've already started. So is that a way that we can maybe put that higher up in the priority list? Because I know this is hiring season. We want people to be on board before summer so they can go on vacation knowing they have a job coming in August.
That's Denise, that's referencing reductions for the 25-26 school year. So we would be looking at initial thoughts for reductions for the following year already. So it's really, we're getting a year ahead of the following year's cuts. So it wouldn't affect next year. But to your point, one of the things that I was going to suggest is that I would prefer for us to also have a June meeting. I think July, we should all take the July off. Although, you know, the board has one full meeting, but everybody should take July off. But I think that June we should meet because I would like for the committee to review the adopted budget that we approve in June. And I think that maybe we could start the conversation about the recommendations for reduction in June. Because I think that it's gonna take us more than one meeting, right? So, so I think that it would be maybe good to have start the discussion in June, give us a little bit break, come back with further thoughts in August. But then, does that answer your question? I wanted to just include my little recommendation in answering that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But if we hire people, then we'll have less of a deficit for 24, 25 if we don't spend the money in 24, 25.
In chat, maybe you have to give the chat again. Shawnee's asking for access. She may have had to jump off and on again, so.
Thank you. Veronica's gonna take care of that.
Thank you so much.
I kind of like the June for the purpose of anything in the May revise. It might throw us, that. Oh,
No, I need access to the Google Doc. My apologies for interrupting. I can't access the Google Doc.
Oh.
you know,
You might have to do
the-
anyone, anyone with the link.
Oh, you gotta put it on anyone link?
Yeah.
Yeah. Apologies, Shanae, we're working on it.
And then if we could, also add these links to the actual agenda, I think that would be helpful for the public to access later. Sorry, Kim, did you want to finish your thought?
No, I just think adding the May revise would be very helpful
Yeah. that's a
in the
discussion.
June piece. So,
That's a good idea.
whoever would find
yeah.
time to do it, but that would be interesting.
I mean, if the May meeting happens after, then then we might get an update in the May meeting anyways. But I guess it'll depend on when we have the meeting. Okay, any additional thoughts? Would you mind scrolling, down? I always struggle of like, is it down or up?
I know, me too.
Thank you,
Yeah,
to make sure that we see the full timeline.
yeah.
Um, okay, President Nichols, go ahead.
My comment is, I like the fact that we're starting early. I think that that's a huge benefit, and excuse me, everyone, I went to the bathroom, so I don't know if you all talked about that, but I really appreciate the fact that we're starting early. I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of built-in time for conversation and commitment to change, right? To whatever we see, we're gonna have that deep dive conversation. I think that's very important. I like how you narrowed things to like, narrowed it down, so we're not trying to eat everything at the same time during the same month and we get overwhelmed. I like how it's very clear and specific. Only thing that I would like to see is kind of built-in reports back out to the board, so the entire board can stay along with us during this journey, so, no one feels as if they're caught off guard in November, December, or January, right? They've all been kind of come along with us, so when you give your reports back to the board during your, because you give lots of budget reports to the board, and I like how that's built into our board agenda.
It might be good for maybe have a space for the budget committee.
Yes,
To give a report.
yes,
Maybe not every month, because I think that'll become overwhelming, but maybe every other month.
yes. I think that I would love to see that built into the timeline, that the budget committee can bring back where we are to the board and bring the board together. Yeah, that's it, I'm complete.
All right.
Absolutely, I did have a thought, anyone else? So I can remember my thought. Okay, I think that, so one thought that came to mind was the April meeting, looking at non-salary expenditures. Obviously, we did that over like a series of 3 months last time, right? So in one meeting, I'm a little anxious of what that would look like. So I was wondering if Ms. Moss, you could talk a little bit about your vision for that, so that I want us to give it like a good, amount of time, but also understand, like looking at this timeline, there's quite a bit to do, right? So I want to make sure that we do both with, what's the word? I'm looking for? Fidelity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. I was thinking about that as well as I was putting thought to what we might be able to do. And it is my hope, so we're doing a lot of work this year with building department budgets where we've already done some of the work. We're decreasing some of the contracts that we reviewed this year that we thought were too much or could be consolidated or condensed. We also have spent 2 years looking at contracts. And we have notes from those meetings, and what we found is that what you said in year 2 was about the same as what you said in year 1. So that contracts that you already looked at and we know can't be cut, like transportation, right? That we could likely, my thinking is we could likely get the contracts review down by first looking at what we've done. You know, this year we're committed to cutting 10% of departments, materials and supplies. It's already a reduction. We could do an overview of what that looks like for departments. So whereas we spent a lot of meetings going line by line, contract by contract, I think if we do a comparison of what we already agreed can't be cut, then that's gonna reduce the number of things we need to discuss.
That makes sense. And maybe at that meeting, we can just have like a list of those things, just for people to reference.
Review, yeah.
But we don't have to spend time on them in particular unless someone brings a question about that, one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. Any thoughts from any of our committee members on that?
I agree that that makes a lot of sense. I think that that's really a smart way of approaching this. I think that it's it's the best use of our time way of approaching it, because I think that if we continue to go back and relitigate things, it slows down the process of where we are, right? So I think that that's really, really good. I am curious, if I may, with that being said, is there gonna be a time where we will say, yes, we hit our goal, no, we didn't? Like, so if we wanted to reduce the lawyers by 20% or whatever it was, right? Yes, we hit that goal, or no, we went off the rails in May, and here's the reason why, right? So we can attach the reasoning to it and say, okay, well, that's just a one-time reason, we can still reduce by 20% this year because we're just not gonna have that incident again. Is there a way, or I know that you're probably having those conversations in business services, is there a way that that can kind of come to the budget committee and say, yeah, we hit that goal? Like for example, we know we're not gonna hit the goal with, keeping the lights on because we had to increase it, right? Remember, we were gonna drop it by like 70,000 or, $1 billion or whatever, but we had to increase it because something else happened, right? So that's when we didn't hit, and we couldn't put it in our budget because we couldn't hit it because utility said we gotta go up. But something else, like, oh, okay, print shop went down, people are paying for it now, this, we hit that goal, maybe, hopefully, right? So I would just maybe look for some kind of summary of, this is what we said, this is what our goal was, we hit it, we didn't hit it, here's, a sentence or two why. That would be helpful for me, just to know that we're making realistic and stretch goals, or whatever those are called. Please.
If I could clarify, what month would you like us to bring that back? Would you like us to bring that in May? Would you like us to bring that in June?
Whenever it's ready.
I guess. I mean, we don't really get an accurate view until unaudited actuals, right, though? Or do you feel like by June you have like, well, we have 2 more months, but it's a pretty accurate number where we're gonna be on what we spent?
Well, we'll do a third interim, like
Oh,
every
okay.
time we do an interim. We did first interim, we learned something, second interim, we learned
Just call it a
more.
monthly update.
Yeah, the third interim, I think we'll have an idea of where we are.
Okay.
I think the bigger issue is gonna be with our contributions, because it really is in the area of special education where there are extremely large contracts that we don't really know until until we close our books, whether those contracts are gonna be fully expended, because we're waiting for invoices. So I think in the case of unrestricted general fund, we'll be pretty close to knowing at third interim. However, special education, it will likely be July before we know
Got it.
if their contracts were fully expended.
Well, then I think maybe for the June meeting, it makes sense.
Okay.
And then we can get an update on SPED in August or September.
Okay.
Kim, go ahead.
So that also goes into, I mean, when we're looking at it in that respect, we'll know about increases in all of our, CalPERS increases, what's going to happen with, anything with Kaiser or healthcare increases usually come between June and August also, if I remember correctly, in all of my contract negotiations district. And that's one area that we start getting all of that information also. But I don't think they give that information, CalPERS doesn't give their information until June, beginning of July sometimes, so depending. But that's when they usually give it, so then we'll have an idea if things are, expenses are gonna go up or down, which will also challenge the district for. Correct, okay,
Yep.
all right.
Over here.
That's great.
And then
Mm,
you said August also the review for the special ed. That's when that comes in,
Probably September, right?
mhm.
September.
I think so.
Is it like that physical?
Any more thoughts from anyone? Okay, well, I think that, we can always revisit this as we go on,
Mhm.
and if we need to make changes, as, we meet, that, I think that'll be okay. But thank you, I think that's actually a really great start,
Okay.
gives us direction for each meeting. Okay, well, since I don't see any more comments, why don't we move to the next agenda item? Unless Ms. Moses, you had anything else for here?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Our next agenda item is the review for approval of contracts over 25,000.
Mhm. Can we project this? Can you share screen? Okay, all right, we're gonna ask Veronica, for those who are in person, we had copies of the contracts that I'd like to share with you this evening. Veronica is going to share screen so that those of you online can also see the contracts that we're reviewing. And before we get started with that, let me just tell you why these contracts are being brought to you tonight. During our budget subcommittee, it was decided that we would bring contracts over $25,000 that are centrally created using LCAP, LCFF, or unrestricted funds, that they would be brought back to this committee for review prior to being placed on a board agenda. The purpose of the review is to give input to our board members in the subcommittee so that they can then share information, the recommendation of the committee when the contract is brought before the full board. I'll just stop there and make sure I covered it all. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, did I state that correctly?
You did great, I'm sorry, everybody, President Smith Wilson and I were trying to figure out how to plug ourselves. And I almost fell with the screen, almost cost the district $25,000. But I was listening and yes, no, that's accurate, and that didn't even work, the plug doesn't even work. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Okay, Ms. Moses, would you like to just lead us through each one?
Yeah, it looks like we have just 6 to review, and most of them are business services, to be honest. These are contracts that, in many cases, just need to, be increased, but because the increase, is using LCAP monies, we're bringing it forth to you. I'm not sure what Orbach is on here, because it's only 10,000. Oh. Because it's a window.
Ah, okay. We also wanted to bring forth, because we're paying such close attention to our legal fees. These are contracts that have exceeded the amount, so they must go before board. We've given a separate line item to Orbach, Huff, and Henderson. This is a business services PO, purchase order for legal. And can you elaborate, Veronica, on the services specific to this increase of $3,000?
They've been helping with some of the contracts, wording, like, with the city of San Pablo agreements.
Yeah, so it looks like use it within our contracts department so that we can ensure that the contracts that we're approving are in line and protect us as a district. So we're asking for an increase of $3,000 for that contract. That's a small amount, but it's a legal contract, so we wanted to be diligent in sharing it with you.
Okay, do we have any questions from anyone in the committee? No? Okay. we can
Okay.
move on.
All right, the next one is we're asking to increase our contract with Ryland School Business Management. They are the consultants that have been both supporting us with the preparation of our fiscal documents, but also supporting us with training staff. Just as a recap, we brought our consultant Shannon Norris from Ryland on when our executive director of fiscal retired. And so the cost of this contract was being covered by that vacancy. We then hired our great business director who is on the call, Jeff Carter. Jeff is working hand in hand with Shannon to learn the ropes, to get advice, and to also ensure that the documents and the plans that we set forth are in line with what's expected in the state accounting guidelines. So we're asking to increase $40,000 in order to continue that work, because we think it's necessary in order for business services to ensure that we're doing the best and have the brightest minds working together on this. So we're asking for a $40,000 increase, and that brings the total to date for $117,000.
So the service will be, this pays for the service to go through, well, this is 3024, which is actually a fairly good price for 1,000 years. But I'm
The date
assuming is
says
that
3024.
April? End of April?
April 30th.
It's supposed to be, yeah. There should be a slash there, through April 30th, 2020.
Hopefully we've trained ourselves at that point to do it right. Okay, so it goes through April. So is the idea that at that point, the service will end and then the service will be done in-house that they provide?
I think we're just asking to get through that time, and then we'll do a self-check to find out where we are, what's still needed. Not sure if we anticipate another increase to be needed, but we hope that there'll be balance available so that if we did need support in May and June, it can be covered. It's a discussion I need to have with Dr. Hurst regarding the level of support with business services. But I do want to point out that when we promoted Jeff, we did leave a coordinator position empty in light of needing money to cover this contract. So we've tried to be very responsible with understanding that we need this consultant, so we've tried to cut elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. I'll go President Smith Folds and then Shanae after.
I think you answered it. You knew that you may need money. So what you did was, because there's a vacancy in the coordinator position, that you had to pay anyway. You had to keep that money anyway in case somebody filled that position. But since no one filled that position, it's like, yo, okay, let's take that and use it to pay for this service. Is that okay?
Correct.
Good. All right.
In addition to, because Jeff is in training, he is a director, not an executive director.
Okay.
And so there's some savings there as well.
Okay.
Because of the difference in the cost of those two positions.
But once, to Clerk Gonzalez Hoy's point, once the learning happens, right, then it's shared knowledge that you can then have, and Jeff can have, and everybody has it, you then give to other people or whoever else, because it doesn't go away. Once you know what you know it, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that, it's not a question, but that makes me feel good. Okay, because it's not.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Shanae, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So you want to continue with this contract, increase it by $40,000. And this is going to continue the training of business services staff and how to handle budget development, interim reports, so forth. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Is that the full business services department? Like all of
Yes.
the employees?
Currently, Shannon Norris, our consultant, because we're rebuilding the department and a lot of people have been promoted into new positions. And what we found is that people who left positions took the knowledge with them. But we have this consultant who's working not only with our Director of Business Services, but also with our Coordinator of Charter Development, working with our fiscal analyst who handles SPED, also works with our state and federal department, which is, that director is also new. And so all of the new staff members in business services are relying on the expertise of this consultant to build their knowledge. We are expecting that after the trainings are complete, we will no longer need the consultant because we have the learning.
So why was the amount increased? Why are you requesting for the increase?
Thank you for the question. So when we had our executive director of fiscal retire in July, we didn't have any viable candidates or any candidates that we knew of being interested. It took us some time to recruit. We didn't know how long we'd need the consultant. If we had hired an experienced CBO, we likely would not have needed her for this long. But because we're investing within and we selected our director, who's awesome, Jeff, he did not have a lot of background in building budgets and managing all of the different pieces that we're accountable to. And so we needed someone skilled to train him. So that's why we need the increase. We couldn't foresee who we would get to fill the role and what level of support they would need.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, we can move to the next contract.
Okay, the next contract is, and I saw Louis Freeze on. I don't know if Louis is still on. Doesn't look like he is. He was on. I thought we were doing contracts first. This next one has to do with audit and it has to do with facilities. Our facilities department, Louis and I checked in today. This is related to recouping fees for our capital outlay projects to the tune of about $8 million. Before we can receive the reimbursement of our fees, we have to provide an actual audit document to show that we spent the money and the way in which we said we were gonna spend it. The cost of this audit is $29,000. And a rule of this reimbursement program is that facilities cannot pay for that from a separate budget. It has to come from general fund. So we're asking that this $29,000 contract for audit be approved so that we can recoup $8 million from capital outlay projects.
Okay, any questions? Shanae, do you have a question? Yeah, I think it might just be from the previous.
Yeah, I'll
So we
put it
can move
down.
forward to the next one.
Okay, great. Okay, the next contract is another legal contract. And this legal contract has to do with human resources and negotiation matters. So what we found is the need to, I'm not sure why there isn't a total.
So
we're gonna increase it by 90,000, but
I didn't miss the total. We're increasing this legal contract by 93,000, and it says previously only 2,000 was approved.
yes.
For the
For Fagan helping and HR.
Yeah, for the purposes of this one lawyer, their work is specific to, is it investigations?
Arbitration.
Arbitrations.
purely for arbitrations?
It is for human resources and negotiations. And, I'd have to look, can you look at do we have the specific request from HR? Oh, what am I covering? Oh. Oh, only you guys can see that. Oh, okay. So this is an ask from HR to increase so that they can continue to use the services, for, negotiations and HR. I'm assuming this may have to do with,
The impasse proceedings.
impasse proceedings. There's also, lots of consult for other negotiations matters that they like to go specifically to F3 for.
Okay, I do have my initial question.
Mhm.
Did we bid for this work or did we go straight to this law firm?
I assume that we went straight to this law firm because bids usually happen in business services, and I know we didn't conduct a bid.
Okay, I know labor's gonna have a lot of questions. I see Kim in a second.
Mhm.
My initial recommendation is that we pull this item. I don't feel like I'd be ready to recommend this to the full board, even though it's needed. I'll just share that it to me seems like a lot of money for advice service, so I definitely wanna hear more directly from HR. I don't think I feel comfortable moving forward, but we'll go question first, Kim, and then President McCoy.
Okay, can you pull the contract too, Veronica, just so that we can see if there's any specific in there? Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
My question, why do we have legal counsel in HR if we're pushing this out so much? I mean, if it's specifically for negotiations, I have an issue because we have legal counsel in. It was brought to us and we needed this several years ago, labor. This is why we were changing the HR structure. They wanted to have somebody with a legal background in there, and that's exactly what Conrad was to have. And now now I understand that you don't have the answer to these questions, but these are what I'm bringing out. I wanna know why we're having to spend so much money in HR for negotiations. I understand that there is investigations that need to occur, there's, that needs non-biased opinions or not opinions, but, people looking into the investigation so that there's nothing that can be said, so nobody can, say, oh, you didn't like me or something like that, but, and neutral, thank you, I couldn't think of the word, I'm having Demetria's problem too tonight. But I'm just curious, $90,000 for negotiations?
Okay, so to your first question, we do not have a position that is related to legal services in HR. Conrad is a chief negotiator. He wasn't hired as a lawyer, he was just hired as a negotiator. He just happens to have a background in workers' compensation law. When you have a background in workers' compensation law, you don't necessarily have the knowledge for negotiations or labor extended law. So I just want to point out that there was discussion, and I remember, I wasn't in this position, but I remember hearing discussion during board meetings about retaining legal counsel for the district. But we currently, I just want to be on the record as saying, we do not have any legal counsel for the district, paid for by the district.
Not how it's brought to necessity. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry,
Oh, could I just pose a concern?
yes,
So we're gonna dig into the contract and find out, yes, why it's so much. It's not something that I looked in before tonight, so try to be neutral, right? However, for a district that has lots of, issues with risk, it seems like we're taking a risk if we don't allow some coverage through the negotiations process, because we don't have a legal person, a person with the understanding of what's needed
when we have to go to arbitration or speak to other lawyers, because our labor groups have their legal counsel. If we don't have our own legal counsel, we leave ourselves at risk as a district. So I'm happy to put this one on hold as we research, but I just want you to consider that we are negotiating with other people's lawyers, we should have our own.
We'll go President Smith Folds, and we'll go back to Kim.
I think the only issue for me is this the best price for what we need? Like, if this is the best going rate for what the summary of services, okay. But if it's not the best rate, how can we get the best rate for the coverage that we need? So for me, I think that the way that business services has it set up is through the bidding process, right? You have to bid out and make sure this is the service we need, bid out for. So I think that's the only issue I have here, and I think that's it. If business services came and said, President Smith Folds, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, we bid out and this is the best price that we can find, and we have to have this service because of everything that you just told us, it would hurt, but I'm like, I see what you're saying. But because that wasn't done, I think that that's the only reason that I'm like a little itchy about it.
Could I clarify?
Yes, could I just ask, Dr. Hurst, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Dr. Hurst, could you please reach out to Dr. Johnson and or Mr. Tenesachuk and see if they could join us for this meeting?
Yep.
Thank you so much. Go ahead. Ms. Wilson.
And my clarification might help. This isn't a contract, it's a pay-as-you-go service. This is an estimation of HR of how many hours they may need from an attorney. But this isn't us giving them $90,000. This is us giving HR the authority to go that high
Okay.
if they need it. So I think a better question, and if we can get one of them on the line, is how do we estimate how many hours are needed? Are there flat fees that we're including here? And how did HR arrive at the figure of $90,000? Because the rate is hourly, and it's them who sets this is in essence an open PO. Is that an appropriate way to say that? That it's an open PO?
It would be an open field just
Yes.
for that.
And PO is purchase order.
Purchase order.
Okay.
So that they might spend 10, they might spend 50, they might spend the whole 90, but I don't know. That's why I was saying we need to understand from HR why they picked this amount.
And we
But
know
it's-
that their previous approval was for 2, and they're looking and like, yo, we know we're gonna need more than 2. So then they just, to your point of clarification, then they have to tell us, well, why did you pick 90? You know that you're more than 2 because you did some metrics.
Yeah.
Why are you at 90? What metrics did you use to get to 90? Okay, that makes more sense to me. So it's yes, and it's bidding, because still, if you're at 300 hours, go to see if another law firm can give you 300 hours at a lower price. And it's 300 hours. That's what we're talking about. It's not just a contract with F3 because it's a contract with F3. It's a contract, an open purchase order based on what we think we may need. And what we're looking for is to tell us how you came to that conclusion, that this is what you need. Thank you for clarifying that. That makes more sense to me.
Okay, we'll go with Shanae and then I have a comment and then we'll go with Kim. Go ahead, Shanae.
Okay, hi. Okay, so the board generally approved the 2,000. HR is estimating they need more. You guys the district works with two law firms, right? Because normally if you retain them, there's so many hours. Well, I'm just gonna say from just my experience, there's so many hours that can be used per month. And they're on a retainer, and anything outside of certain things that they may have to do, like arbitrations and hearings and things like that may be an on-demand fee. So I am interested in knowing how I could say $2,000 may be a little bit on the, not, I'm sure they need way more than that budgeted in, but 90 is, that's a lot for that one particular firm, because I know you guys work with another firm as well. So I'm just curious to know why this firm and what specifically do they target versus the other firm that the district uses? Because that's a pretty hefty number. So I guess we have to wait, Conrad, and
Well, I can answer some of that. That is a great question because Veronica and I review the legal invoices before we pay them.
Mhm.
So, and I have to sign each of those invoices before they're released for payment. So, we both have intimate knowledge of exactly what's being billed and how expensive these bills are. And, we're working on an internal structure in order to, try and reduce what's being billed. A lot of it we recognize as it's absolutely necessary. But there's a small portion of this where we wonder if they really needed to call the lawyer. And so I think that is, we've talked about this at the cabinet level. Dr. Hurst is consistently inquiring. He's concerned about these legal fees. But the reality is the law firms want to know that they can expect payment from us. So it isn't that we have them on retainer and we're giving them large sums of money, but we can show them through an open purchase order that we can pay you up to $90,000, right? They want the assurances that we are gonna pay their invoices, and that's why we go through this process of estimating what's needed and getting approval, so that as we're getting those bills in, they're comfortable that the board has approved payment for them, and we're reviewing what that payment is covering. And it's everything from phone calls to investigations to court appearances. It's a run of the gamut, and we have several law firms that we work with because they all have different specialties.
right, that's
And-
what my question, like, what does this particular law firm do that requires that the district could pay up to or whatever? That's what I kind of was, and I understand you signed the checks and you look at it and all that I'm glad that's happening, but that's just, like I said, to me, just in my experience and dealing with the different firms, that, we work with, I just, yeah, okay.
YF3. I get you. YF3. Okay, looks like Conrad's on the call. We're gonna promote him and perhaps he can give more specific information about Clerk Gonzalez Hoyt's question. I think I promoted him. You do. Okay. Good evening, Conrad. Can you hear us?
My apologies. Yes, I can hear. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, no problem. So we just had a discussion, Mr. Tenasachuk, about why this contract, why there's this request to increase the approval number to 90,000 for Fig and Freeman and Full Frost. And we just wanted to get a little bit more context from you because President Smith Boltz and I and our labor partners were feeling uncomfortable with this request.
Understood. Thank you. So I was asked in terms as it relates to a budgeting amount for the upcoming year. And what I did was take into consideration, we used F3 as it relates to our legal positions for UTR. And so that would include, both if we're asking for advice on particular issues, as well as if we have to have an unfair practice charge and or an arbitration. And for example, in one arbitration, it could amount anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. So I had used the figure of $90,000 just to cover in case, for example, that there was an unfair practice charge. And if there was, or we had to go to a PERB settlement conference over a particular issue, and or one labor arbitration. So I picked that to encompass basically one of each, so that we had sufficient funds to cover that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is outside of the retainer amount. There's no, it's just, this is just for specifically, okay, I think you answered my question. I'm sorry, Demetrio, for cutting you off. I thought you were done. Okay,
no, totally
that
fine.
makes a little bit of sense. That makes, okay.
Yes, thank you. I mean, so I'm still a little uncomfortable because, well, I guess I'll just say it. Dr. Hurst, I would also love to hear your thoughts as well, but, you know, I think that for UTR particularly, right, they have a staff member who does the unfair labor practices, does the impasse process, right? We have a legal department, right, that we could always contact, like to your point, right, if we need advice. But it's really the staff who's doing that work. So it makes me uncomfortable because I know that it's not their lawyers who are doing the filing and things like that. So I guess my question is, why can't we do that in-house? Because you know, I'm the Mark Mitchell for South Bay, right? So I know that I'm in 3 impasses right now, and I'm the one that is doing all the paperwork and does all that work. So is it a capacity issue, or like, I guess that's what I'm trying to understand, because I think that, like, I guess I'll be more direct. Why can't our staff do this work, outside of the advice piece? And Mr. Tanishuk, you're welcome to answer that, or Dr.
Okay.
Hurst, if you have thoughts, you're welcome to add as well, but, I would like to just learn a little more of the why, and if we didn't have this like timeline that has to be tonight, I would ask that outside of this, but we don't, so I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I'll provide my perspective, and Dr. Hurst can also add his professional advice. So as it relates to in-house, normally in terms of, for example, like a settlement conference for an unfair practice charge, mediation, things like that, that can be handled in-house. As it relates to, like, for example, a PERB hearing and or usually a labor arbitration, a lot of times it's been referred to outside legal counsel because of the nature associated with, in terms of questioning, cross-exam, as well as preparing exhibits and or post-hearing briefs. So I believe that part of it can be done in-house, and part of it still would require, just because of having 5 bargaining units, and we don't have necessarily a department itself, that part of it has to be assisted from the outside. You're correct in the fact that, you know, UTR, because Mr. Mitchell is a licensed attorney, handles the majority of the legal issues from UTR.
Okay. I didn't know Mr. Mitchell was in it. Well, just so you know, I'm not an attorney, and I handle those issues in the South Bay, but I hear you. Thank you for that. Dr. Hurst, anything you'd like to share?
I mean, I would just share with you, and I think I've shared this with you and the president, that the capacity of the staff to do additional work beyond what we're doing right now is very, very limited. And I think I've been going into detail with both of you on that piece.
Yeah. Ms. Moses?
Conrad, is the $90,000 figure, I mean, how accurate is that? Have you estimated how many hours we may actually need? And do you think we'll stay close to that 90, or is that, worst case scenario?
Thank you, Ms. Moses. So what I believe is that that's an accurate reflection, and the fact that we use F3 mostly just for UTR. And as a result of that, we've been able to resolve most of the issues. So with UTR, before they've gotten to either an unfair practice litigation with PERB and or a situation where we have to go to arbitration. Obviously, we had one arbitration, but we've been able to resolve the majority of the issues in front of us. So I believe that 90,000 would be an accurate amount.
Could I elaborate one more time?
Yes.
Okay, and just from, I'm in the world of risk management now. So just, you know, these issues are confidential in nature.
Sure.
But the reality is, in some of these cases, realizing that if we do not get it right, it could cost us a really large amount moving forward year over year, right? If we are not receiving appropriate guidance and we don't get it right, it could have a huge fiscal impact. And so, you know, from that standpoint, I'm unsure. I'm not a lawyer. I'm new to this world of, you know, arbitration. I've never even done one. But given that I know that there's an initial, what I hear is that there's a large initial price tag just for starting arbitration. It isn't something that we prefer to do, and it isn't something that we selected to do. But since we have to do it, we also have to make sure that we're protected, you know, because of risk. So I just wanted to cite that.
Well, I do have a recommendation, but I'll go to Ms. Steen first, and then I'll make a recommendation. Go ahead, Ms. Steen.
This is just a comment, and from a site manager's perspective, I feel like exorbitant attorney's fees are a reactive way in which to spend our money, as opposed to spending our money on training our people proactively, so that we don't get ourselves into these situations where we have to file a PERB or we have to go into mediation. So I'm just suggesting that maybe we look at some training for some of our management, some of our, you know, our folks who are getting into these situations, so that they can avoid them. Just an elephant in the room.
Can I make a comment to Ms. Steens?
Sure.
I appreciate that, Ms. Steen, and the fact that last year we did a lot from HR. We did a lot of training on investigation as well as grievance handling, and that's only a portion thereof. But this year we've really tried again to focus a lot of attention on trying to resolve issues. Our overall grievances in terms of resolutions at the lower level have improved, and we've been able to resolve issues. Now that is also has to be, that type of training, et cetera, needs to be pushed down in terms of, so that things get resolved at the lower level faster. But thank you for bringing that forth.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Kim, we'll go to you, and then I'm gonna make the, go
I've
ahead.
had my hand up for some time in the room.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have looked up, I'm
You keep
sorry.
saying just a moment and then you skip me.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I agree with Denise on the training portion of it. That was a big piece for myself. We've had numerous opportunities to provide and get people together, such as the smoke days that we have, and there's PD days that we have built into our system, that we could be working to get numerous groups together to provide them PD to understanding and assisting with some of this. I understand it's not gonna help us with some of the lawyer and what they're doing, and I'm reading that portion of it, but I do agree with Ms. Steen that maybe teaching people how to handle things in a better manner than just going forth where we are. I'm not thrilled with having this happen again. I don't particularly care for Fagan, the 3 Fs as has been put down there. I don't particularly care for this law firm. I don't get it, it's a money for them. I don't see that they pay attention to this, to the district. I would like to have us in the future. I know we're between a rock and a hard place for June, for 2 months left. Looking towards a different law firm to work with from now on when it comes to the HR. There's certain things with special ed that, you know, law firms are very particular. There's certain business ones that I know everybody has their specialties. Just like a teaching credential, you have your specialty. So I would love to see us work towards a different law firm working with our HR negotiations. And it's not that I've ever had to work with them. I've been able to work with the district as an SSA labor person. But I don't like the context and what I hear from people that have had to be interviewed by them from SSA.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, oh, I see Dr. Hurst. All right, I'm never gonna get to my recommendations. Go ahead, Dr. Hurst, please. We would love to
Just
hear.
very quickly, I was just listening to Kim. Thank you for your feedback. We'll definitely bring some recommendations to the board and get some guidance and direction on them. I will share with you that they were chosen F3 specifically for their litigation expertise. And we do have AALR as well, but they don't have that litigation expertise. But with that, we will certainly consider that and bring some recommendations to the board.
Thank you. Okay, I know that what I'm about to say is gonna make people uncomfortable. And you know, I would love to hear her feedback, you know, later, but this is what I'm going to recommend, and I would love to hear President Nichols' thoughts. I'm going to recommend that we approve 25,000. And then if more is needed, that it comes back. I do think it's too much. I'll just be honest. I do think that we need to be really thoughtful of what we use them for specifically. And that we don't overuse them for things that we could do in-house. You know, 25,000 at $600 an hour, which is what like most, well, some law firms that deal with labor issues are, right? I'm looking, no?
No.
How much are the charges? And Dr. Johnson, right? Veronica, how much? do they-
Between 260 and 430.
Okay, so I was really going higher, 200 and how much?
260 and 430.
I can't believe that sounds reasonable after what I said, but, so that would be about, let's say the middle, let's say 300, that would be 84 hours of work. So that's what I'm gonna put forward. If there's more money that needs to be needed, I want to know specifically why. And what specifically they're supporting us on, and that can be internal for the board if needed, but like, I think that's what I would need to feel more comfortable with approving $100,000 contract for them. We'll go President Nichols, and then would love to also get, you know, Dr. Johnson's thoughts as well.
This is not anywhere near my field of understanding. But what I do know is that stereotypically, law firms may upcharge, right? Just stereotypically, like this may be like, hey, I'm gonna send you a 5-paragraph answer when I could have done it in 2 sentences, right? Or whatever, if I get charged by the word, whatever. I think that if we tighten our belt, then we are better utilizing them when we have to have them. Instead of, we're breaking that habit of just going to them, we're actually building our own musculature to where we may not have to have them. However, I do understand risk. So I don't want us to handicap ourselves so much that we don't have room to course correct, right? But for me, I don't know F3. I don't know if they're the best people out there. I don't know anything about them. What I do know is that Kurt Gonzalez Hoy is in this field, like he's in this realm. He does it every single day, he understands it. So taking in all of that into account, I have to listen to the experts in the room because we're not binding ourselves. It's not 25,000 and that's it, right? It's like start with 25,000. They get to see that we can pay them 25,000. We get to put a little guardrails around how often we use them. And then I like the fact that if things go through business services, I like that if it goes through business services, it's been bidded out. It does, I like a process. So for me, I would like everything. I know your office is already at max capacity. But if I knew that everything went through business services, then I would have more of a, because I know you have a process. Not saying everybody else doesn't, I'm saying I know that you do, right? And I believe that one of the things that we need to do in this district is one's checkbook, one person. You say yay or nay, right? And I get that that can be daunting because everybody's pulling at your purse strings. But I also know that, you have the bigger vision in mind, that if my yes is my yes and my no is my no. So I would like to see us all support you around that and be able to understand that you've already looked at the impact of what that yes is my yes and my no is my no. So I'm complete. I support Clerk Gonzalez's Hoy recommendation, knowing all the things that we just discussed. And I also recommend that everything gets funneled through business services. I'm complete.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Forgive me, I just joined. I'm not available by video.
It's okay.
I do have concerns. What I did is, I have met with AALRR, not with, 3F Law. And I asked if I could have a breakdown of, we get 100-page summary of our costs. What I did is ask if you could summarize that into categories. So I have that and I can share it with the board and Dr. Hurst. That breaks it down into our CPRA requests, our governing board, HR matters, and union matters. So I can clearly see how the money is being spent. The challenging part is I cannot predict when we're gonna have a CPRA. I cannot predict, well, to some extent, I can see where if a grievance is going to continue to go on. But in HR, I cannot predict when someone is going to do something egregious. And, dismissal charges it may result in dismissal charges or an investigation. So it's just a little bit challenging to put a cap. And I think we're making statements without having the knowledge and the data necessary to make the statements that are being made. Some of them are valid, as in, yes, we can do some things in-house, but some things require the legal experts. So it's just a little cautious for me. And we are talking about it in our HR director meetings, and we are now looking at the data. We have a Reading tracker, so we are aware. We were happy that this month we were down $70,000 compared to last month. So we are making a conscious effort to save costs. And I guess that's really just what I needed to say.
Yeah, thank you.
I will share this information with the board and with Dr. Hurst.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, yeah, what I'm confused about it's just that, Dr. Ernst, before you came, what was said is that this was specifically for negotiations with UTR. I think that you made some really valid points about needing, if there's need for fighting as a personnel situation, things like that. That I completely understand. I think that's what we use the other law firm for, right? This one specifically is the problem, the challenge for me, right? And the area where I feel like some of it should be done in-house. So I guess that's where it gets a little bit muddy with me. And I guess I would love to hear your thoughts in response to that, because I have no disagreement if you were asking for an increase in I want to say ALRP, but that's not the right place I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Other law firm, for this one specifically, I'm hearing is because of the impasse negotiations with UTR, which is where I have the problem with.
I understand. I apologize. I'm just now logging on and I just heard legal fees. So, I hear what you're saying. I think if you, whatever parameters you set, then our response is that we meet with our attorneys and say, these are our parameters. This is the budget that we have. So what services can you provide within that budget? And then we've got to figure out the rest on our own.
Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Canessa Chickup's hands up.
Yeah, thank you. I think there was just a misunderstanding, sir, in the fact that the negotiations, it was actually more meant for if there was a PERB situation, not negotiations, because we have if the matter does go to impasse, we do have AALLR, a different attorney in terms of assisting us with that particular matter. So F3 has been dealing specifically with UTR on different litigation matters and not negotiations. So my apology, I think that was just confusing. Hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity.
No, it actually confused me. I was clear and now I'm actually really confused. So, because the summary of service actually calls out negotiations. So, I'm sorry, I think that Ms. Moses, if you could clarify and,
I'm gonna,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, I think as I look, and I'm gonna solicit some help from Veronica. As I look at how this is written up, it says matters pertaining to, but not limited to, human resources and negotiations department matters. I think probably, well, I don't know enough, but when I look at this wording, it looks to me like it could be used by the department or by Conrad. That is how I'm reading it. Can you help me, Veronica?
No, yes, that's what it's meant for.
By the
So,
HR department
By HR,
or by
by
Conrad?
Conrad, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when really Conrad is a part of HR. However, so we're gonna refine this this process when we bring contracts back to you next time, because
Okay.
there is some missing information.
Okay.
The reason why, well, this one's a larger one, but you know, anytime we request to increase a contract, when they're over board limit, it has to go to board. And because our process is unrestricted, come here first, we're coming here first. I think we need to figure out the process, because I'm absolutely, I mean, I'm happy, I serve at the pleasure of Dr. Hurst and he serves at the direction of the board. We'll do whatever you say. But when we're making decisions like, well, they say they need 93, but we're gonna give them 25. Well, we're putting them in a position as if, what if they need 40, not 90, but 40? They still have to stop work and come back and ask for another increase of $15,000. So my only concern, and I don't exactly know what they're asking for this $93,000 to cover, or if they even have a clear indication of what the hours look like. But I think maybe what we need is to bring that information forth. Why this amount specifically? And then see if we can go back to them and say, hey, can you decrease this? Or are there some measures that can decrease? Because killing it here means that, you know, it's just gone. It doesn't go to full board. It's just gone. So I think we should probably work on that, because I don't really know what this entails, but again, they asked for it, so I think we should go back and find the real reason why, I don't say real, the in-depth reason why they asked.
So your counter suggestion would be to go back to F3.
No, to go
Oh,
back to
go back
Conrad, to
Conrad
Dr.
and Dr. Johnson. Okay.
And
not
say,
F3.
give us an itemized list of why you need $93,000. How many hours does this cover? What are you potentially looking towards fulfilling? And then if it looks unreasonable, then we say, hey, can you reduce that?
Down
Can you
to
not?
this.
Why would you, you know?
Okay.
Because without knowing the why, I'm really uncomfortable with assessing the risk. And that's the only reason why I bring this forth. So I think we have some work to do, and I just wanted to share that with the full committee,
that nobody wants exorbitant, we don't want
Right.
these large legal fees, none of us do. But until we have a process that allows us to responsibly cut them back, we also don't want to be put in a situation where we've added more to our fiscal deficit because we didn't have the right guidance, if guidance is what's needed. So,
But by us not approving an increase until our next meeting, would that not allow for services to start?
well, this is an increase to, I'm assuming F3 has more than $2,000.
Yes.
That's the other part. I,
And we do have an invoice to pay.
okay.
On top of this, maybe.
It will be part of the 90,000.
An
So,
invoice to what they've already done. They've already done some work.
Oh, I see.
Is the work that they've already done outside of $2,000?
Yes.
So no matter what, they gotta get paid. So no matter what, we would have to approve enough to pay them. To Ms. Moses' point is, it's better to have a one-time type of increase instead of having to come back to the board or to this committee or whatever again. But also to what Ms. Moses is saying is, can I have a minute to go back with Dr. Johnson and Mr. Conrad and say, to help the committee feel more comfortable, can you give them a itemized list of what you expect, think, or may have already used, or just a little bit more detail to give them more information about why you want to see 93,000 instead of their suggestion of 25,000 or their idea of that. So because the HR and Mr. Conrad have more of an idea of hourly, they're looking and saying, okay, what we have on our table now would be 85 hours. We have until June. We're not sure what can come up in June, but if we estimate or guesstimate, excuse me, this, and I can show the board. Am I understanding that correctly?
yeah, and I think what I'm thinking, like, so, how are we need to be responsibly using these services.
Right,
For example, if we're asking the attorney to come sit and listen to us, we don't need that.
right.
We can write notes and give the attorney notes and ask the attorney questions. That saves 4 hours right there. 'Cause we're
Right.
not having an attorney in person, we're only consulting after the meeting. So I think having the opportunity to have those conversations, because I don't know if that's the ask, because it's not presented to
Right.
me in that way.
Right.
But what complicates things further, and that's why we'll dig deeper into this, we probably have 3 or 4 open purchase orders for Fagan. Because the way in which we track expenses, SPED uses Fagan, SPED has their own PO. The reason why HR doesn't have money for Fagan is because they have a small PO, but now they want to use them for something else. So I think, Veronica created a very comprehensive spreadsheet that shows who's being used by each department and calculating their expenses. So we can see who's using who, and they all have different POs so that we can track how much they're spending. So it's a complicated situation, and it is something that we need to refine. We need to refine our policies for staff, because they do need legal advice from time to time, but how are we reining that in? What are our overarching policies to make sure that if we can get a service for $40,000, we're not asking for 90? And I just don't have that information. So that's just the clarity I'd like to gain so that we're responsible, because I'd like to cut it too.
Ms. Chamberlain.
I agree with Ms. Bowles with the itemization and the documentation going backwards. Working with auditors, wanting to know where we spent the money, where we got our information, how we got our info, how we derived at why we spent the money in that manner makes sense. Yes, we do need to pay somebody for the services that they have already done, and I get it. Looking at the time frame, it is not 30/24, it does say 9/1/23 through 6/30/24 on this. I do remember in our previous meetings, the amounts in there and just doing some random calculations. If we're paying them $500 a day, an hour, just on this piece of it, and we're paying them for 3 hours a day, we're $270,000 at that point, at 180 days. Okay, I'm working in school days at this point and for all of us. That would make sense to me. But I do totally agree, we need an itemization. I don't want names of who they've worked with. I want, okay, made phone calls, we did this is how we were doing it. It was for, you know, that type of an itemization. I wanna know that's what we're spending our money on, not just filing a piece of paper, as we all said. Yes, we could have Clerk Gonzalez Hoy learn to teach us all how to do that, since he's getting good at it now. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I just agree. I mean, obviously, you can tell I'm still uncomfortable. I definitely hear what you all are saying. I think that, I don't even pay attention to the timeline, which makes me even more uncomfortable that we're gonna pay, you know, I mean, I understand we owe already, but like, whatever we don't owe, let's say that we already spent 30,000, we're gonna spend 60,000 in 3 months, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, I think Dr. Hurst, if you can hear me, I think that I just wanna make it clear that I am not okay with these contracts coming because of negotiations. I understand all the other reasons why we need legal support, right? But like, specifically negotiations, I mean, it just seems like. Yeah, but, okay, anyways, what are your thoughts?
I think I want a lot of information. I think that I need to understand time, cause I do a countdown. Once we hit 100 days, I'm counting down. It's like, we got 44 days left. We got 44 school days left. And like every teacher in the district, I'm like, put off the gas. Let's see if we can just coast and not bump into anything, right? So like, how are we just trying to make it to the end line? I mean, are we looking at things that may happen in the summer? Are we looking at things that may happen all the way to next year? Like, I'm trying to figure, because it says June 30th, right? So June 30th is, you know, a little over 60 days, because I'm adding on after we get out in June 8th or whatever. I would be curious about what we already owe, the open purchase order that we already owe, just to make sure that we cover what we owe. But I just need more information because I'm not versed in this. I just don't know. But $93,000 makes me uncomfortable without having the knowledge of where it's going. Like, I understand a little bit of the why it's going there because I've heard it, but I don't reverse that. I kind of think I need more information on why it's going to these specific things. And then, because you guys kind of told me where it's going, but why is it going there, and does it have to go there? Like, I guess to everyone's point, did we have to pick up the phone, right? Do we have to pick up the phone for this one, or are we using them to? And it's hard because at the same time, if something happens and somebody comes, well, why didn't you call the lawyer? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's trying to balance that out. And because I'm not versed in it, I hesitate. Like, I hesitate saying yes to 93, and I also hesitate saying no to 93.
For sure.
So, because I hesitate saying yes, and I hesitate saying no, I cannot say anything unless I get more information. But I also have to lean to what makes sense. Right, so I need more information. I'm complete.
Okay, well, I think that we spent plenty of time on this. Dr. Hurst, do you have any last thoughts before, like, either I go off the rails or we move forward?
No, I was listening loud and clear. I hear both of you and everyone saying we just really want more information coming before the board and this group as well, some detailed information on how everything is being expended and who these conversations are happening with. So we can definitely do that. So we heard you loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I did see 2 hands up, so I saw Dr. Johnson and then Mr. Tenesichuk. Go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
I will actually let Conrad go first. I was going to say something if he did not, but I believe he is prepared to speak, and then I will follow up if necessary.
Right, if he doesn't say it, you're welcome to then speak up. Go ahead, Mr. Teneschuk.
You're muted.
Thank you. I think there was some confusion when the figure came about as it relates to budgeting. It was my understanding that it was for next school year and not this school year. So I did not realize that it was actually ending for this school year of 06/30/24. Otherwise, I would have provided a different projection figure because we have incurred in costs already that still have to be. So as it relates to that, and then secondly, it doesn't relate to negotiations itself, even though it says negotiations department matters, because there's other issues such as arbitration, unfair practice charges, et cetera, that come through HR and labor relations. So I hope that does clarify things a little bit.
I guess, thank you for that. I guess my question then would be, why are we not seeing an increase in the contract with AR, what are they called? You said,
ALRR.
oh goodness, to the other legal firm, here it is.
They're down there.
We are actually, but, why are we not seeing then like a larger increase for ALRR who does that type of work? Are we like giving some of it to Triple F? And this question is for you, Mr. Teneschuk.
Thank you. So the as it relates to UTR, we are utilizing F3. And the other matters, we utilize AALRRR. Sorry, I think I put another R or L there for the majority of the other situations with the other labor groups. So we're utilizing F3 very limited at this particular point.
Okay, so, Mr. Tanasachuk, does that mean that we can reduce this contract to $25,000 and that will be enough through June 30th, 2024, based upon your current understanding of what we need to do and that this needs to end in June?
Yes, however, we did recently have an invoice of which the amount of 25 would not cover, so.
Mr. Teneschuk, could you share what that invoice was for, so that I can at least picture what what we use them for? Was it for our filing of impasse? Was it for I would just like to understand what is costing us so much, right, through them.
Happy to share that, sir. So this was in relation to the UTR arbitration for cash in lieu specifically.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's it.
So CBO Moses, what I think I heard, and pardon me, Clerk Gonzalez, may I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
What I think I heard is Mr. Conrad say, we need more than 25 now just to cover an open invoice that we may have. But we may not need all the way up to 93 because it's just for the duration of this year. Is that what you said, Mr. Conrad? Did I summarize that correctly?
You are accurate.
Okay.
How much was the invoice that we have to pay?
$150,000.
It was a little over 33, trustee.
Okay.
Thank
A
you.
little over 33. Okay.
Okay, well then can I change my recommendation to 35?
To the rest of the year.
For the rest of the year? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, okay, I mean, listen, if we need their services again, Mr. Teneschuk, you can come back to us for additional funding, right? I just wanna make sure that we are keeping up with, yeah, okay, I think you heard it, thank you, that's really helpful, okay. So, Ms. Moses, are you okay if we move it, change it to 35,000?
Absolutely. I just don't want to be in a situation where we have to come back and ask for more.
So do we, besides the invoicing that we've already done, Conrad, is there more time that's gonna be needed on the same issue through June?
Not
Because
in,
we- Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries.
Not on this particular issue, however, there is another matter that was referred to arbitration that we hope to resolve. So if we could actually increase the amount to 40, I believe that that would resolve all matters. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy.
Thank you, Conrad.
Does it have to take 33? If we keep it to 40, that means it only have the leeway of 7, right? So-
Okay, thank you. Then let's go ahead and do that. Let's do voting.
Okay. We're gonna need to amend the contract to reduce the amount. Conrad, Dr. Johnson, can you work with, Veronica to make sure that happens?
Yes, it would, yes. Veronica, can you please CC Danielle and whatever I need to do? Because she will be the one who does it. But yes, I will work with Veronica.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Tanasuchak, Ms.
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson for joining us last minute. I do appreciate it. I think that we are okay at this point, so you don't have to stay for the rest, I don't think. Right, Ms. Moses?
Correct.
Okay, so thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Go tonight, whatever is left. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you. We can move on to the next one.
Thank you. I feel like that we made some progress. We have 40,000 instead of 90. That's a good thing.
And there's a lot of understanding.
And we
Now I
both
kind of
understand it.
understand, and I
Yeah.
think talking it through and Clerk Gonzalez Lloyd, to your astute leadership, having them come to speak for themselves and give us more understanding, I think was really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Can we go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so again, this is another small contract, just being brought forth because it needs to go to full board because the amount exceeds board limit. This is a very small contract for $4,500 and it covers the cost of district leadership training. The lawyers needed to provide guidance. And so because of that, we're needing to create a PO because the POs that we currently have are for legal matters. It's unusual or uncommon for us to pay them for a workshop. For audit reasons, we have to code that differently, so we need to bring it forth to you to create, increase the amount we're given to this vendor for the purposes of creating a separate line item to cover the workshop because it is not legal advice.
Why are we using them for the workshop? Are they someone that, I guess, yeah, why are we using them for the workshop?
It was,
Oh, never mind,
yeah,
I got it,
it's because of their expertise.
got it, okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Any questions from anyone from the committee? Okay, thank you. We can move on.
Okay, this final one hurts and it's kind of tricky.
Okay.
Because it is a contract, that we are not, well, that was, there was some confusion. This is the contract for A to A, which we did not previously bring forward because I thought it was decided that it was going to be discontinued. However, it was a multi-year contract that was not, that we had to face because it was signed for multiple years. And they continually ask us for payment. And we've been digging in to see if we indeed needed to pay that. Unfortunately, we're bound by contract to pay this amount. So we're bringing it forth to you for permission to pay. But this is a contract that we are canceling. This is the final year of a multi-year and they would not reduce the amount or alleviate this invoice from our staff.
I do remember it from our conversations in the fall.
They like pay us,
Yeah.
even if you cancel, you still have to pay us.
Questions? Anyone?
We'll get on a payment plan.
What, who are we going to use after this is gone?
That's a good question. I don't think that it's a question for me to answer. I know we had some discussion about how to replace this service, but I don't know where we landed.
Oh, Kim Chamberlain,
I was gonna say.
our school expert. Just kidding.
I want another, how many years have we paid into this and how much was the whole contract?
That's a really good question. I can give you well, you know the history. You were a principal, I was a principal, and when we first started using this, the idea was it would recoup ADA. And we had the support of the district attorney's office in ensuring that we had a clear process within our district. And then there was also a continuance of the process in order to hold the adults accountable for the attendance, whether it be within our system or within the community.
Education, right?
Yes, the compulsory education law. In recent years, we haven't gotten the return that we would expect because the processes of holding the conferences and referring them to SARB and having the district attorney involved has diminished. For compulsory education laws and for chronic absenteeism expectations of the state, we do still need to notify parents when their kids are chronically absent. But doing it in this way costs us an exorbitant amount of money, and we aren't finding that we have offsetting costs.
People don't
And-
read form letters.
And I will leave it there because the rest of it is not my wheelhouse, just the budgeting part.
Okay.
But I do agree, we still need something to address, you know, compensatory education and chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That was the last one, right?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Well then. Our next item is next steps. So we talked a little bit about our review and the timeline of our next meeting. Is there anything that anyone would like to request or ask for the next meeting that they would like differently or that they would like us to bring?
Can we get a emailed version of the paper copies that you guys have if we happen to be on Zoom?
Oh, yeah, so, the staff's going to attach them to the agenda. Maybe we can just resend the agenda link to everyone, if that's okay?
Yeah,
Once they're attached.
all of the links were in the chat tonight, but I think Veronica needs to upload the links, so Rosa needs to upload the links, so we'll get them to Rosa and have them uploaded.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
It was the same thing 3 times. It was just the agenda, but I didn't see the paper versions of the contracts in there, is what I mean. Right.
They can't be uploaded by Rosa because she has the hold of that piece into the agenda.
Yeah, so she'll upload that and also the document for the timeline and the second interim document that Ms. Moses shared as well.
Thank you.
Clarifying question?
Yes.
If we're gonna make the timeline public facing, I think I need to clean up those, cause it's unfinished.
Yeah, would you mind cleaning it up? But I do think that people who log in will want that as a
Okay.
resource, so, yeah, if you could clean up or at least put draft or whatever it needs to, yeah, that'd be
Okay.
helpful.
Will do.
I'll
draft.
Anything else, President Smith Folds?
I think that there's a value to being at this meeting in person. I appreciate everyone who logged in because I'm a good loginer too. I was in a meeting before this and I logged in. But I love when we're all in the same room. I think it gives us a different energy. It helps us build our own capacity. And it gives us, I think we go further faster when we're all in the same room. So I do appreciate everyone coming and logging in. I would hope that we can get a schedule out so people can see if they can make it here. And if we have to have those conversations like morning meetings, mid-afternoon meetings, whatever, to work around people's schedule, I would encourage us to do that. But I do want to thank you for this meeting. It was very well led. CBO Moses, Veronica, thank you so much. Everyone who joined on the advisory committee, thank you. I think that we did good work tonight. So I just wanted to say thank you for that and encourage everyone to, see what we can do to make it in person. I'm complete.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think President Smith's suggestion of having all the dates for the full year would be really helpful. So, I think especially for legal furnishing, I know that this is last minute. Ms. Steen, please thank Jay for coming. I really appreciate that you guys sent Jay as an alternate. But I know it's last minute, so, we will get together, President Smith Bowles, Ms. Moses and I, to look at the calendar, and Dr. Hurst, to look at the calendar for the year, and then we will send a draft of those dates for you, the committee members to review before we approve them as our final dates for the, for the committee. Would that work for everyone?
I think that's great.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Let's see, anything else? Shanae, anything from you?
No, I'm fine. I have everything. It's a lot to process. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. Okay, well then, our next meeting, as I mentioned, we will announce once we have the date. And then I will adjourn us at 7:45. Thank you again, everyone. Good evening.
Okay, that's 15.
Thank you, good night.
Minutes from me. 15 minutes. You know, everybody is.